at some point I looked up and I realized I'm in a clearing. Like I am in a clearing within the woods. And I don't know, I'm so passionate about it because I know so many people are in that space, especially after the few years that we've been stuck in. Everybody's mental health is kind of struggling right now.
Hey everyone, I'm Claude Silver, and I am an emotional optimist. For me, there is absolutely no false or toxic positivity in emotional optimism. It is simply an awareness that we have the capacity to influence how we feel and how we think, and that even in our darkest times, we know that the light is actually always there. So join me as I ask each and every one of my guests what emotional optimism means to them. And again, thank you so much for joining us. This is a real honor for me. It's nice, when I get to reach out to people that inspire me. And it's funny, I'm in a wonderful position where people reach out and want to talk about culture or work or working with my boss or VaynerMedia or anything like that. But I'm actually quite bashful reaching out to others. And so
I love that.
It's so funny. So I was sitting there one night and one of your wonderful posts popped up. And I was like, I'm just going to write her. I'm just going to do it. And thank you for saying yes.
I remember getting that message. I think we started communicating immediately.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's so cool.
I think I'm the same way though, because I do feel like there are a lot of inquiries that come through, but then whenever I want to make an ask, I'm always so nervous or almost like I'm somebody, I'm going to get rejected, And then when people come back and they're so excited or so grateful, I'm like, maybe this is just something going on in my head that isn't exactly a true story,
That's exactly right. It's just like the self-talk that we tell ourselves that both you and I coach and inspire others to get out of. And yet, I'm so perfectly imperfect that, but I wanted to ask you about your origin story and where you're from and really, who was Hannah at, 5, 6, 7 years old? Where was she? What was she up to?
Yeah, I feel like I am a lot like who I was when I was little. I wouldn't say that I was always that way. I definitely feel like I went through a period of I just want, I want to be like everybody else. I want to do what everybody else does. But I remember from my earliest days, always feeling like maybe there was something wrong with me because I didn't care about what other people cared about. I didn't care about going out to play with my friends and all this stuff. I was I want to help the world. I want to write novels. I want to create things. I always felt this thing inside of me that wanted to do something bigger. And I thought everybody had that. And I think that in it, I don't know, I still kind of have a theory that everybody does, but that it gets hushed as we get older. And so I'm so thankful for a mother that really cultivated my childhood and cultivated who I was as a person and didn't tell me to shut that off or dumb that down, And so I've always been wildly creative in my own head, very much always making up worlds in my own head. And I still have that today. I just think that I have learned, especially as an artist, how to build discipline into my life. Because if I were just to be led by my emotions and my feelings, which I have a lot of those, I don't think anything would ever get done.
I love that. I can relate. What is so interesting is when you say, as a youngster, you felt like something was wrong with you. And then in the next sentence, which by the way, I can completely relate to, I just thought I had a missing chip. That's another story. But then in the next sentence, it's so interesting how something was wrong with you and you thought and dreamt bigger. How those are so, is juxtaposed the right word? They really don't fit together. logically.
Yep. Logically.
And yet here you were as a kid thinking big, wanting to help the world, having a heart to help. Sounds like at a very young age, identifying that and being like, but this isn't what I'm seeing around me.
Absolutely.
Potentially in my circle of friends.
Yeah. Especially as you got a little bit older. I remember like, you know, like you go to like middle school and all of a sudden you're like, I just want to fit in. Like, that's all I want. And I don't think I ever, not that I didn't fit in, but I remember I've been thinking about this all this past week and I have no idea why. Maybe it was for this moment, but I had this memory of going to a newspaper staff meeting when I was in middle school. I was so excited because all I wanted to do was write. And I was like, as quick as I can start doing this, I'm going to start doing this. And I went to the newspaper staff meeting and I remember somebody had told me newspaper wasn't cool. Like it wasn't a cool club. And that was the only meeting I ever went to. I never joined the newspaper staff because I didn't want to seem uncool or unpopular or to do something that was going to set me apart from the crowd. And I look back and I'm like, I don't have many regrets, but I should have joined the newspaper staff because seriously though, like what is the point of trying to fit in and be popular and all these things when in actuality, like these little bubbles of like high school or college, like they're going to break and you're going to wish that you had figured out who you are or what you bring to the table and like stoked that fire in you. And so it's like, my only regret is that I didn't start doing it sooner. And I did it in quiet corners and quiet spaces, but I wish I had just put myself out there more. Because once I started doing that, then I was like, oh, I'm not an accident. Like there's nothing wrong with me. This is how I'm wired. This is beautiful.
I love that. And once you put yourself out there, I mean, look at where we are today.
Yeah.
You know, you've written 3 incredible books. You're obviously a huge influencer online, your blog, Instagram where we met. I mean, it's just, that's, I think you and I were talking offline for a second that we both have, you know, young kids. And of course we can't micromanage them, but we can help guide them to course correct if we see them going down that road of like, no, I can't do this, or no, I'm an introvert and that's wrong, or no one like, you know, it's like, no, actually shine. That's you, shine. Let's radiate that because you've got a gift. I believe you, everyone has gifts.
Yeah, and I totally agree.
Yeah, obviously you did. And I think how interesting for people that might have told you back in the day, newspaper club wasn't cool. And I would imagine some of them follow you today.
Yes. And you know what's interesting, like going off of that vein of like, when I was a senior in college, again, I mean, like, I think I had really come into my own and like come into my own skin. But when I was a senior in college, like blogging was just beginning, like it was blowing up, you know, like Julie and Julia style. And I remember it was one of my like best friends that was like, you know, you should start a blog. Like, you know, you're the newspaper editor and like you come up with these things all the time. Like you should just put it out there more often. So I created this blog. I fell in love with blogging and still to this day, like 11 years into blogging. And I just love blogging. But I remember that there were these girls on campus that some were even friends of mine that just didn't like that I was doing this, like kind of hated it and bullied me. And like, I'm like, we're 21 years old. Like, are we past the point of bullying, you know? And I look back now and I'm like, maybe they just wanted to be able to do the same thing and didn't have the courage to step out and do it. And then that's why they got mean or they got nasty or whatever it is. It still doesn't make it right. But like, man, I wish I'd had that mindset back then of like, people are not necessarily always going to be a cheerleader for you if you choose to go against the grain, if you choose to do something outside of the box. That doesn't mean that you should let them run your life or stop you from doing what you know you're supposed to do.
Exactly. And I think about those girls, and we've all had those people in our life, whether or not it's even today in your professional life or as a younger person, but it's envy. And envy is envy then comes out. Envy is fear and jealousy, and it comes out as, you have to make someone wrong because you want what they want, not realizing that it's attainable. Yes, of course, I'm not going to be able to, decode some kind of NASA experiment thesis. So I can't have that, but I certainly can still have an interest in astronauts and space travel, which I do, but not really. I don't know where that tangent went to, but it came from. But envy is such a powerful elixir for some people.
Yeah.
And until it's not, until self-awareness kicks their butt and kicks all of our butts eventually. And,
totally.
So thank you for sharing all of that. That's really cool and really brave of you to actually then in college say, no, actually, this is my gift and I'm going to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then continue on to today and tomorrow and the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any favorite sayings or phrases that you keep on your laptop or you keep on your wall or songs or anything that just like, yes, that's who I am. I carry that with me every day.
Oh, I have so many. I feel like my mom always tells me I have way too words like surrounding me because like, I don't know, I've always liked that. Yeah, I mean, like the one that's right here in my office that I see every day, it just says simple obedience changes everything. Mm-hmm. And that's just a reminder of just like showing up, waking up, being present to this day, whatever is in front of me. And I think the reality in that is that like, if you'd asked me 5 or 6 years ago, I probably would have said like to have a productive day would be like to get everything done on your to-do list, to get to inbox 0, to like conquer the world, so to speak. And I look at it now, especially since becoming a mom, and I'm like, like productive looks a lot different, and like, I just need to be able to show up to what this day holds for me. And that will change everything. And that does not mean that days are not going to look ordinary or mundane or not exactly how I want them to look. But like productive isn't just what I produce. It is how I show up to this moment. And so like, even last week, like my daughter was in the hospital. She was in the hospital all week. And it was a very scary time for us. And we didn't know what was going on. But like, I look back on that week and I said, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I was right by her side. I was going with her into the x-rays and the CT scans and everything. And like, to me, I would never look at that week and say that week wasn't productive because what I was a mom and I was a mama bear in that week. And like, what I needed to be doing was being exactly where I was and allowing my support system to come in and surround me. And like, I'll look back and say that was one of the most productive weeks of my life as a human being. And I would have never thought that like 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. Wow. First of all, is she okay?
She is good. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have to get into all of it, but I've been a little bit candid on like Instagram that she's had some like severe car sickness, like motion sickness every time we get into the car. And so we've really been trying to figure that out because she's been getting dehydrated and all these things. And so it just kind of was a perfect storm of circumstances that landed us in like a pretty scary situation.
Yeah, of course. And especially for, a 17-month-old, like
baby,
they're like so innocent. I'm sure they have no idea what dizziness or vertigo or nausea.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I hope she gets better. That's super scary. That is super scary. And so I have, I'm going to ask this next question wondering, we'll just see where it goes, but where do you get inspiration? Huge, huge question. But where do you get blips of inspiration, if not inspiration?
Yeah, I think a lot of my inspiration, I think it comes from a lot of places. And I will say this, like I have been learning throughout the last few months that the more I shut my phone off, like power it down completely, the more inspired I am. It's almost like I shut off this pathway and I can finally see like everything that's in front of me. And so for me, like inspiration comes through reading great books, reading great words. I'm very visual. So like I like to flip through magazines. I like to go on Pinterest. I get inspiration through prayer and meditation. Honestly, most of my inspiration, and this is weird because like COVID really messed this up for us, but like it's sitting down one-on-one with somebody and getting to listen to them and hear what they're going through and hear their stories and meet new people. And so I would say all of that is a cultivation of like where I get inspiration from. But that first thing is like figuring out how to be present. And for me, that's like shutting my phone off for multiple hours each day so that I can just be in the moment. And then I feel like everything around me is like, oh, I could write about that. I could write about that. I could write about that. But it only happens when I shut this thing off.
And so I'm sure they're studying that in neurological places, which is that stimulation and that wanting to, the dopamine hit that we get, or the wanting to see it on this page or this page. I mean, when I see not only on my laptop but on my phone how many tabs I have open.
Oh my gosh, right?
I'm like, well, wait, Claude, why aren't I just reading it in that moment? Or why aren't I going back and reading it within a week?
Yeah.
Like, let's just give myself a week's, what is it doing? It's not doing anything 80 tabs back on my phone.
And we're not even like consuming it, really. It's kind of like we're like, the way that I look at, like, if I'm, in my kitchen throughout the day and I'm just like, instead of making a hearty meal that's going to fill me up, I'm grazing off of goldfish and pretzels and veggie sticks or whatever it is. When I'm like, hold up, if I just paused, sat down and enjoyed and savored this thing, I would feel so much more content and so much more full. I think that's like the diet we've given ourselves when it comes to social media.
Mm-hmm. I love the analogy as someone, again, that has small kids. Like, I have a bag of pretzels right here. I have the goldfish, the pirate's booty, all that stuff.
Oh, yes.
And I'm feeling it too, because whatever is on her plate comes into my mouth. But I think that's a wonderful, back to the idea of obedience and discipline and being present, shutting, it's not even, it's shutting it down, but it's really giving yourself the gift of being present so that you can do what it is you're here to do, or one of the many things you're here to do, which we want to be as easy as possible because it's a gift that you've been given. We don't want to make it challenging. So, you want to create that space where all of it can happen, because that's the spaces where the magic happens. Spaces where,
Totally. I totally believe that. And I've seen it in my own life, though, of like, when I'm in that zone and when I'm not in that zone. And I can always pinpoint like what's wrong. It's like, oh, I'm consuming too much social media. I'm too plugged in. I'm reading the news too much. Like I'm consuming, but not contributing. And I think contributing doesn't always look like, oh, I have to have the right thing to say on Twitter, or have to, I feel like a lot of that, like, it's like, I love to create words that are going to be like timeless words that people can read at any juncture in their life. But like, if I were to spend all of my time just trying to come up with a rebuttal of things I see on the internet, like that would be all my creative juices, and I don't think that I'm called to do that, because I think there are plenty of people that are filling in that space. For me, like, I feel really called to the internet to be a light on the internet in a very dark space, and to remind people like, hey, you may be walking through these woods, but I believe that you are going to come out of this. And I believe that you are going to get to the other side of this thing, because I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it over and over and over again. And that doesn't mean like I want to add any kind of like toxic positivity or anything to the world, because I don't know. I kind of live in this space where I don't believe everything is okay. And I don't believe everything happens for a reason, but I believe that you are okay in the midst of this, and you will prevail in the midst of this. And so that is what I want to give to other people. I don't know how I got to this space in this conversation, so I apologize.
I love it. Well, you've just described what I would call emotional optimism, which is being with it all. Oh, no, I'm not okay. It's a dark day. We got COVID. We got this. We got that. And yet there is a light in the coffin. There is a light in the
Yes.
tunnel, and we will
Yes.
get there. Not in your. And I love that you said not in a toxic positivity way, because I agree. It's not everything's great. It's
No.
no. This is really friggin' hard, and it hurts, and I've stubbed my toe 8 million times because it's dark, and
Yeah.
and with one another, support, whatnot, finding people that are lights, we will get out. We will get out, and we'll be there. We'll be a beacon of light for that next person. And it's funny that, and it's actually, it's not funny. That's not what I want to say, but I don't know how we got here in the conversation, but I love that we got here because it's also Suicide Prevention Day, which is enormous. And I know you write a lot about mental health, mental wellness, emotional health, emotional wellness. And that's pretty much where I spend a lot of my time too. And what a wonderful message to give, which is there are dark days. It's always, what do they say? It's darkest before the dawn.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is a truism. It is darkest before the dawn. The dawn does come. That doesn't mean like, I say that from a very entitled place because I'm not in Afghanistan right now. Yeah, I wasn't hit by by Hurricane Ida and all of those things. So I want to recognize that I'm sitting here in a very dry place, and I've had lunch and everything. But but it's just interesting and I think it's so important that there are people out there that are really hurting, and for whatever reason, don't feel like they can find the light, ask for help, reach out, and. I just want to like call attention to that and really say out loud, like, there are plenty of people out there that will be your island, that will be your hand to pull you up. And
it might not. I always think back to like, when I was going through severe depression and I was having suicidal ideations, and I look back and I think there is always someone there to be that island. It just might not be who you expect it to be. And that's actually really beautiful in and of itself. It's like, I look back and I'm like, I didn't expect that person to show up, or I didn't necessarily want that person to show up. And yet that person was a better support to me than people I'd known 10 years, And I think it's like just being able to be open to that help, because I think like, especially when it comes to like depression and mental illness, I talk to a lot of readers who, are like, why did this person not show up for me? Or why did this person walk away? And I know that feeling, and I know why they are angry or they're upset or they're bitter. But in actuality, I look back and I think before I went through all of this, I don't know that I knew how to show up for somebody in a really dark time. Like, I didn't know, I knew what I knew, And so it's like sometimes someone has to go through something really hard and really awful to then be able to know how to show up for somebody else that's in the thick of that. And so it's like the people who showed up for me were the people that had known the dark themselves in various ways. And they were the ones that like knew, this is how I'm going to show up for you. I'm going to show up to just literally sit here with you, or hold you in my arms, or bring you a meal, or give you something to do. But I don't blame the people that didn't know how to show up in that, because it's scary, and it's scary to walk with somebody through something hard like suicidal ideations. And so like, I think it does start though with admitting and saying out loud, like, I'm not okay right now. Like, it is okay to not be okay, and start from there. I remember like when I went to the emergency room, because I knew like, I'm not okay. I need help right now. And this crazy, weird peace met me in that dark time, because I knew like, I am surrounded by people that are going to help me get out of this. And like doctors who are not fazed by this, and people that are not fazed by this. And I am going to come out of this one day. And I knew it. I knew it wasn't going to be that day, and it might not be that week or that month, but like, I think I started to shift my mindset to just start focusing on what I call like the breadcrumbs, like with like Hansel and Gretel, where their mom had said, if you ever get lost and you need to find your way home, you know, you follow the trail of breadcrumbs back. And so I started to find those breadcrumbs in the woods, and they were little things, you know, that friend's text, that friend's prayer, that cup of tea, that doctor's visit, that prescription, whatever it was, that at some point I looked up and I realized I'm in a clearing. Like I am in a clearing within the woods. And yeah, I don't know. I'm so passionate about it because I know so many people are in that space, especially after the few years that we've been stuck in. Everybody's mental health is kind of struggling right now.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, we talked about the toxic positivity, you know, it's like, I'm not telling you that a journey to health is easy or that like, you know, you can do it all in a day. It's not true. But like, I have learned over the years that like, it is important to take care of ourselves. That is not a selfish thing. That is not like the way that our culture looks at self-care is like, no, like you cannot pour from an empty cup. And so we need to figure out ways for you to pour into yourself so that you can show up and pour into the people you need to pour into.
Yeah. I'm sitting here nodding my head. And first of all, thank you so much for sharing some of your story. And it's really powerful and it is really important. So thank you for the courage
Absolutely.
and the ability to do that. Really, without people sharing their stories of their dark times, people end up feeling alone and isolated. And that's where the hopelessness really can root itself, can burrow and root. So thank you so much for sharing that. I really,
absolutely,
really honor that. And it leads me to my next question around more love letters. And how did you create that? Why did you create that? I'll put a link in, for Instagram, but it's just such a marvelous, happy place for me when I go there.
Thank you.
It's just, it's warm. It's warm.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because like this month makes 10 years of more love letters.
Wow.
Which it's crazy because it's like, I think that so I'll tell the story behind it. Was when I first graduated from college and I moved to New York City, I found myself struggling with what I did not know at the time was depression. So, 10 years ago, I don't think we really talked that openly about mental illness or depression. It was like something that was reserved for like that 1 week of like college orientation. We talked about depression and that was it. It wasn't like normalized in any way for me. And so feeling these feelings of loneliness or sadness, or like I'm in such a privileged position right now to be living in New York and working at the United Nations. And yet I am so deeply unhappy and so deeply sad. Like, what is wrong with me? And I didn't know how to open up to people about that because I felt really ashamed. And so as a way to kind of cope, I started to write letters, like just really honest letters about where I was at and adding encouragement into those letters because I think I'm just a natural encourager. And I started to leave them around New York City, which everybody's like, that is so strange. But
my God.
If you grew up with my mother, you would understand it because my mom has always left letters for me to find all throughout childhood. And when I moved to my first college dorm room, there were letters hidden for me. And even still to this day, when she comes and visits in Atlanta, her letters are found throughout the house and she leaves them for me and now she leaves them for my daughter. And so I'm getting emotional talking about this, but
so beautiful.
I always that was my way of communicating was by letter writing. I would write letters to my friends. I write letters to my daughter now. I write love letters to my husband. And so it was a really normal thing for me to go to like my favorite bookstore in New York and leave letters in my favorite books I had done it all throughout college, And so, when I blogged about it, I put it on the internet. I said, I'm writing these letters and I'm leaving them. And I know this sounds crazy, but like, if you want a letter for whatever reason, I'll write to you. And I thought like, I'll get a few people I did not expect to get this tidal wave of hundreds of people asking me to write to them and like sharing some crazy stories. And I really at that point too was like kind of in like kind of a crisis of faith of like, do I believe there's a God? Do I not believe there's a God? You know, I was in that space. And I knew after I got those emails, I was like, oh no, I do believe there is a God, because like, I believe that this is what I am called to do for the rest of my life, is to show up in this space and to be basically a love letter to people. And so I started writing back to people. I wrote about 400 letters before I wanted the story to be over. I was done with it. I mean, I like letters, but I didn't like them that much, you know? And it was everybody around me that was like, Hannah, like, you can't kill this story. Like, you can't kill the story when it's about to get to the best part. And so at the age of 22, I built a website. I came up with a concept called a love letter bundle, which was like, what if somebody could nominate somebody in their life and then like letters start showing up for that person? And I tested it out that first month with like my best friend who was going through a really rough spot. And I put her story out there and I didn't know if anybody was ever even going to like be a part of it, you know? And like, we got like 70 letters within those first few days and they just kept coming. And I realized like, we're onto something here. And so it's been 10 years, which is crazy. And I don't even know how many letters, but I want to say probably in the hundreds of thousands of letters. And what's interesting too, though, is that like, you know, that you said like, this is like a really warm place for me, or like, you know, like it's always had that impact on people. And I think I went through a season 5 years into it where I was like, I am so sick of this thing. I want this thing to go away forever. I almost wish I hadn't started it, because I felt like I was trapped as that 22-year-old girl who left letters around New York City. And I look at it now, 10 years in, and it's still going. And I'm like, this isn't for me. At one point it was for me, but it is for any other person who encounters this at this time and needs to know that there are other people in the world cheering for them, or that they can show up and do something immediately for somebody who needs it. I think that especially with like the way in which words are used in the world today to cut people down so mercilessly, I'm like, no, we need to do the opposite of this. Our words hold power, and we need to use our words to build people up. And so that is what we do with More Love Letters.
I'm just sitting here. Yes, that needs to be just broadcast from the highest mountaintop, I think. And that is amazing. I mean, and it's extremely, you did it out of a place of coming out of a place of darkness, or, to really kind of like self-heal, actually. And it's given so much life to people. And
it's crazy. Every day it amazes me.
Yeah,
it amazes me.
Yeah.
It's funny. Oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
No, I was just saying that, like, I do a lot of different things in my business and like write books and all this stuff. And my mom still to this day is like, it's not as great as More Love Letters. More Love Letters is the greatest thing, And it's like,
it's going to be part of your legacy, of course.
Yeah.
Words, obviously words. The, back in the day when you were dropping letters into your favorite books in the beginning, what did those letters say? What was the 5 sentences that you put in there, or was it 25 sentences?
They were, typically about a page long, like a notebook page. And I was always honest in those letters. So it wasn't like the way that I probably write like an encouraging letter now, because I really didn't know who was ever going to pick up the letter. And I did not want to be contacted to be found. Everybody is always like, you signed those first letters, right? And like put like a hashtag or a handle. And I was like, no, like somebody somewhere in New York City has one of my letters still to this day, and it's not signed. Like, it's just, that wasn't the point for me. The point was to be able to get this ugly feeling out of me and onto a page. But then also I kind of had this hyper awareness of like, somebody else must be feeling this too. And the part of me that is a romantic that like will forever love New York City. I'm like looking around my office and I'm like, it's full of New York things, even though I'm not a lifer. There is a romanticism to that city that I think it could have only ever happened in New York, because I just would always imagine that if I left a letter behind on the subway, somebody was going to come and sit there and they were going to find it, or I'd leave it behind at a coffee shop table. And that's New York right there,
Yes.
you know? And so I always wrote to the person that would find the letter, and it would either be the words I needed to hear that day, but I wrote a lot about like how it's crazy that you can be in this city surrounded by people and still feel so alone, like more alone than you ever felt before.
Yeah.
And I always spoke to that person because I just believed that person was going to find the letter, and that person probably still has it on their bedstand today, you know? Like, that's like my life's wish. I want one of the OG letters. Like, I want someone to find me in all of this.
We have to, you have to do a call out one day, unless they just find you.
I know. I want to do I want to do a modern love column. Like, that's like, a call out to like, do you have this letter? Like, do you have these letters?
Oh my God. I love that. You could take out like a big old ad in the New York Times or wherever people read now. I wish actually it would be so cool. How we all just go, sometimes you just go google.com. And so the Google logo shows up. Sometimes it's someone's birthday, Thomas Edison's birthday, whatever. We just need the call out to you. If you have one of my letters, click here. Because it's out there. That is just
it's going to happen one day.
Oh, of course it is. Life is long.
Like, you want to hear a crazy story?
Yeah.
This is like, if ever, and it always happened at like junctures where I like doubted what I was doing, because it's not conventional. So like, it was a little bit like, I remember I was at a speaking engagement at this college in Massachusetts, and it was new student orientation. So it's like, I did the speaking engagement every single year, and I would dread it every single time, not because I didn't like love the people that worked there. And like, it's just new student orientation is hard because like, they're nervous. They're scared. They don't want to be sitting here listening to a speaker. They're like, I want to go home. Who just dropped me off at college, And I remember specifically just kind of being in this space of like, what am I doing? Like, what am I, why am I here? I'm not going to make an impact. Like, and there was this guy that came up to me after the engagement was over, and he was like, I didn't know that it was you. Like, I know nothing about this, but he was like, I served our country for 10 years, and I got to the point where I said, okay, you know what? Like, I served this country. It's time to like hang up my jacket. Like, I want to go to college and pursue my dreams. And so at the age of 32, he went back to school to this college that ended up being one of the top colleges in the nation for video game design. And that was his dream, to be a video game designer. And he said, but I was listening to you speak, and I remembered a guy from my unit who dealt with suicidal ideations and depression. And we did everything that we could to help this guy. And he turned around at some point, and when we talked to him about like what had changed, he showed us a stack of letters that your organization wrote to him. And he was like, he is alive today because of those letters. And I didn't know until I was sitting here that you were the person that saved his life. And like,
wow.
Right, I was like weeping in tears. Like, we just don't know. Like, we don't know the impact or the life that we save when we show up and we do the uncomfortable thing or the thing we don't feel like doing. I probably wanted to be a million other places than on that stage that day. And I would never know that story.
And you got the gift.
Yeah.
You walked away with the gift.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so incredible. My eyes are watering. That is so, so beautiful. And that is like such emotional bravery. The uncomfortability of it, all of it, from the genesis of even how you started it, being uncomfortable in your own skin,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
now sitting here and being like, I mean, I cannot believe that story.
And there
that
are
is,
dozens like it that have
yeah, of
just happened.
course.
They've always met me at the point where I doubt, where I think, why did I do this thing? You know,
Yeah.
like I still have those days and I don't know how. I've created one of the most beautiful things in the world, but like, I don't know. I don't know why I'm getting emotional right now. This is like therapy for me.
Yeah. Well, but also it's such divine intervention. You know, we don't know why we do these things. And then you
Yeah.
realize like sometimes it's just happening, right?
Yeah.
As you said, like sometimes we're vehicles in the best of, and I mean that in the best of ways. We're vehicles for something so much bigger, such as the power of love.
And that's the thing too of like, you know, I think that over the years, I think maybe I would bully myself to say, like, have you led this organization well enough? Have you done enough with this thing? You know, and, you know, there were so many opportunities to market it or partner with these big companies or do all these things. And I just always kept it exactly as it is. Very simple, very, maybe too simple. I don't know, but like it grows every single day. People find it every single day. And it was never about that. It was never about making money. It still to this day, I don't make a dime off of More Love Letters because I just want people to know that there are people out there in the world who do not need to be paid money to see you, to write you a letter, to show up for you, that like on the days when you wonder if you met